SuperTalk Mississippi media production. Middays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. Middays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Middays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy, howdy.
Well, it was a spectacular weather weekend across the Magnolia State. A bit on the windy side, however, but, man, it was officially spring weather. Beautiful. Same over there in Augusta, Georgia, for the annual spring ritual of the Masters tournament. Congratulations to Rory McIlroy. He from, of course, Northern Ireland. He wins it with a 12 under par, and that was his total. He shot a 71 yesterday, -1. Good for him. That is back-to-back Masters titles for McIlroy, and he's in some pretty dang high cotton, having won the event twice. That's a pretty big deal. Tiger Woods, of course, the last professional golfer to have won the Masters twice. Who else? Gene Sarazen, I think. And Jack Nicklaus. Pretty high cotton there, huh? Anybody else? I'm missing somebody.
Only 4 golfers in history have won back-to-back Masters. Jack Nicklaus, Nick Faldo, Tiger Woods, and Rory McIlroy.
Faldo, that's what it was from the 90s. Boy, I remember that. That was good.
Jack Nicklaus won 65 and 66.
There you go.
Faldo won 89 and 90. Tiger won 2001, 2002, and now Rory won last year and this year.
He played great, too, did Rory. Man, he was on it, especially the first 2 days of the tournament. Got a little shaky, but that's understandable in the middle of the tournament. I was blessed to have attended the 1997 Masters. That's when Tiger won his first green jacket. And that was quite the deal. He was, of course, the young buck on the scene and was making the course look a bit silly just because he was so dang long. Nobody had ever seen that kind of length. And he was handling it with ease. Course has been adjusted a little bit since then to account for the fact that players hit the ball so much further. Now, a lot of that is a result of equipment. No doubt that the players are better conditioned than they were then, and we know so much more about how to condition to hit a golf ball. Just like is the case in almost every other sport, to be honest with you. We've learned that. And in every other sport, equipment has improved. But perhaps none more than golf, where the clubs are better, the balls are better, all the above. But it was a great Masters and a great finish to the Masters. We had kind of a jammed-up leaderboard going on. The president says, okay, Iran, you won't abandon your nuclear ambitions. Tell you what, we're just going to go ahead and blockade the Strait of Hormuz. 21 hours did J.D. Vance, our vice president, meet with the new regime, whoever the heck they are, kind of nameless at this point, and came away without a deal. And I did catch a rather lengthy interview with the president yesterday. conducted by Maria Bartiromo. He loves her. He's always willing to give her an interview and talk to her for a long time. And you got to respect the fact that as the president, he doesn't just get in and out. I mean, he stays and he addresses all the questions and all the issues. And I find that particularly refreshing given the prior guy we had that seemed to always run for the press, always had a lid on the day, or whenever he would conduct pressers, it was all orchestrated and staged and calculated, scripted. You're going to call on this one and then that one. They're going to ask you this, and this is what you're going to say. Remember those days? Were terrible. But he stayed with Maria, as he always does, for a long time. And she did ask him point blank, what does total victory look like? And, of course, he prefaced that by saying, we've eliminated all their military capability, but when we will back out, call it a day, put a bow on it, is when they agree. No nuclear weapons. And they won't do that. They would not do that during the negotiations. I don't get it, honestly. I guess they feel like they've got some degree of leverage and they can stand on that position and not soften it. But I think the president has made it clear as well, he's not going to back down of that fundamental requirement. He said it 30 years ago, and he's saying it again today, and is the team that traveled to negotiate, and that is, you can never have a nuclear bomb. It's a shame that we have to do that, and it's because these people are crazy. So think about this. One of the unique aspects of this country, and I know you and I have talked about that, is that our armed forces are not controlled by the armed forces. They're controlled by the people who elect the people, civilians who control it. And in these other countries, it's nutcases. It's literally one person that could launch a nuclear attack. The military serves at the will and pleasure, if you will, the armed forces for what it's worth that they have, of a small number of people who control everything. And that's just a dangerous situation because it's Putin in the USSR. Well, Russia now. It's the same deal. It's all at his behest. And so I think that's a risk for this country, and it's problematic. But the blockade is underway right now. The U.S. military says it is in force. I'm not exactly sure what that means, other than my understanding is no ships are moving through there whatsoever, right?
Not without authorization.
Okay. So now the president said if they don't come back, I'm fine. After the peace talks between the two countries really broke down without a deal. This is in a conversation he had with reporters at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland. He said, quote, their military is gone and their missiles are largely depleted. And that is true. But they still have this uranium somewhere in the country, right? Do we now believe it's enriched, or some of it's been enriched? Is that what our intelligence says? Which means, in fact, they were dangerously close to producing a weapon with that enriched uranium, and I don't put it past them that they'd launch it. I really don't. And I don't think the situation's going to improve or change until they give up that uranium and agree to discontinue their nuclear ambitions. But there's something else must be going on, in my view, some point of leverage, piece of leverage that they have for us to not take the next level of action just to put this whole thing to bed. I don't know what that is. And I believe that's probably known by a scant few, which is the way it should be, in my view. But that's kind of where we are on that front. We got some interesting news this morning on existing home sales. A 9-month low, tight supply. Existing home sales down 3.6%. Inventory up. This is interesting. And median house prices rose 1.4%. $408,000. The median price of a home in this country. That is unbelievable. Now, of course, median means half above that, half below that. And the markets are kind of tentatively reacting. They're not really sure what to make of all this. Inventory remains a major constraint on the market. That's from the National Association of Realtors chief economist Lawrence Young. An additional 300,000 to 500,000 homes for sale would bring the market closer to normal conditions and allow consumers to make purchase decisions without feeling rushed. Coming back in the Element Wealth studio at 11:05 today, it's Congressman Michael Guest.
The Huntington's disease.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. The great Tom Petty bumping us into this segment. So did you happen to watch the Artemis II splashdown? Did you catch that?
I didn't catch it live, but I watched the replay.
Man, I watched it live. I was working out in my yard and doing some cleanup stuff and had the TV on. I had to sit down. It's incredible. And it did, in fact, instill in me a feeling of patriotism and energized about this country, thinking, we talk about this all the time, and maybe that kind of drives a little more special meaning into this, is only in this country, only here is this possible. This is a marvel of technology that can only be produced in this system. No other country is even remotely close to this ability. And guarantee you that China's watching. They know. They see what's happening in Iran. They see what's happening here. They get it. They know that despite their best efforts, they're behind. And the reason is because they force it. And when you try to force people to do stuff, they just don't produce the same.
Or if the consequence of failure is dishonor or death, you wind up with fudged reports.
That's true.
Like we've seen with their stealth spotting radars that they gave Iran.
Good point.
That's why most of the top brass in the Chinese military has been turned over in the last few weeks.
Yep. So these folks flew farther away from their home planet than anybody in history, came back, splashed down off the coast of San Diego, and it was just fascinating to watch that crew in that space vehicle parachute in there and just land so softly in the ocean. It's absolutely incredible. At 17 miles per hour, that was their speed just off the coast there. It occurred at 8:07 Eastern Daylight Time, 7:07 our time. Unbelievable to think about. The journey, of course, began on April the 1st with 6 rocket engines. Pretty powerful spacecraft. I told you that it reminded me of the old Saturn V rocket. Massive structure to break through gravity. That's what the bottom line is, and propel them on their voyage to the other side of the moon. Unbelievable. But perhaps what was most gratifying was hearing the crew talk about the experience, saying, no way in a million years would I have envisioned that I would have this opportunity and be part of this crew, and I couldn't wait for it. Of course, you can imagine the excitement, just what would be standard human feelings of anticipating something so unique. And they all said, and one in particular did a great job of describing it, said, yeah, and then once we got airborne, and especially as we drifted and we traveled further away, all we could think about was getting back to Earth and being with our families, going back home. That was just incredible. But does that not just illustrate the commonality of humans, honestly, in my view? What human wouldn't feel like that? You're all excited. You're pumped up. Probably can't sleep. You're stressed out. You're worried. All the above, right? The range of emotions and concerns and excitement. You blast off. Things are going well. You're traveling towards the moon. You get on the other side. You've just done something that now only 4 people, right, on the planet have done, and that's travel farther away than anybody else, any human. And you start thinking about, okay, I want to go home. I want to get back to the beautiful Earth.
It goes back to the thing I say a lot, is that people have been people as long as people have been people.
Yeah.
Because if you think back to early mankind, and everybody you knew was in the valley you grew up in.
Yep.
But you have that desire, that primal need for exploration. You need to see what's at the top of the hill, what's on the other side of that mountain, what's beyond that meadow. And those are the same feelings and experiences way back when, stripped of all the technology and the know-how, that these astronauts were experiencing with all the technology and know-how.
100%.
You go out on this great expedition to explore what you don't know, and you do have those longings for home. Yeah. But you still go.
That's exactly right. It's you're torn, of course, and then human logic attempts to take over. And you're making your decisions and really just getting comfortable with what's about to happen and reconciling that both physically and mentally really is incredible. Now, there was an Artemis 1, you remember that. That was during the Biden administration. I don't remember the exact year, but it was uncrewed, right? And it was a test, and there were some problems, I think, discovered as part of that mission with the heat shields and so forth, and improvements were made.
I wouldn't say it was problems. There were patterns in the degradation of the heat shield that were unexpected.
Okay.
But they used that data to redesign the patterning of the heat shield, and there were no problems.
Okay. The heat shield, of course, necessary to protect against the friction created as you re-enter the Earth's atmosphere and gravity starts to take over. Turns out that's kind of dangerous. It is for humans, at least, and that's the purpose of the heat shields. And so they did improve them. But there are a lot of folks on the left now that are trying to downplay this event. Well, this all got started under Biden, blah, blah, blah. And no, you know what happened. You remember this. We talked about it on the show. Artemis 2, as I recall, was commissioned in 23. That's the date that's in my head. Check me out on that. But there were significant delays in the project itself. And the reason, as I recall, is because Biden decided that he wanted NASA to focus more on DEI and climate change as opposed to, exploring space. Same thing that happened with our military. As you recall, that the focus was more on diversity, equity, and inclusion. He ordered all the agencies to establish chief diversity officers and create these massive, sprawling bureaucracies of people that were ostensibly charged to making sure that all the decisions, all the policies, all the activities were always grounded and with an eye towards DEI. Well, that's not what NASA's all about, any more than it is the U.S. military. We had a whole dang month in 2023 where the military and NASA and the White House, the Biden administration, were just all over in June of 23, Pride Month. Can't ever forget that. Remember, one of the top brass at the U.S. Space Force, Deanna Burt. You remember we played her video on the show, and she had this big event celebrating Pride Month. She's in her uniform. Was she a general? I don't know. She's top brass. And I remember her saying that it was important that the military embrace the LGBTQ community, that it's a war-fighting imperative and a force multiplier. I remember specifically those words coming out of her mouth. And you know, the other thing she said that you were shocked at is that, oh yeah, well, at least 25% of the people in this country in the prime recruiting ages of 18-24 are members of the LGBTQ community. I'm calling horse hockey on that, by the way. You remember that. She talked about how she anguished when she assigned personnel to various posts because she needed to make sure that she didn't assign them to a duty where they would be based in a state that has passed anti-LGBT laws. Talking about that this individual may need gender-affirming care or their family, someone in their family, literally anguishing over that. How the hell did we get all wrapped up in this crap in running the armed forces or any agency in our government here? But that's exactly what happened. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Great tune, the Moody Blues. Great video, too. So sometimes, you feel like you're just losing your faith in humanity, and then inevitably, maybe it's God's way, something happens to restore your faith. Such is the case with a Chick-fil-A worker who found $10,000 in the bathroom of his restaurant in North Carolina and returned it. There were 2 white envelopes near the toilet, one labeled First Citizens Bank and the other Truist Bank, a total of $9,333.
$9,833.
Okay. The report I'm reading says 3. But it roughly $10,000 between the 2 envelopes. And he returned it to their HR department, is what he said. He said, my first thought is Jaden Cintron, the name of this individual, 18 years old. My first thought was just like, oh no, this isn't happening. Something is wrong. So he didn't put it in his pocket. He turned it over to, again, the Chick-fil-A HR department so they could try to figure out who it goes to.
You're right. It was, the extra $500 came from, when it was returned to the owner offered him $500 for turning it in, and he tried to say no several times and finally relented. And
and actually it was a reward, essentially, they wanted to pay, and he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't accept it. he said, why didn't you, he was asked, why didn't you keep this money for yourself? Quote, that's not what Jesus would have done. That's not what God would have wanted. Wow. I'm saying this is an 18-year-old who's been raised right. First, he's working in a Chick-fil-A at 18. Second, he comes across $10,000. No doubt, more money than he's ever seen in his life. And sees fit to return it to its rightful owners. That's incredible. That just made my day when I saw that. Yeah, there still are good people. I still believe there are more good people than bad people. And then amid all the chaos, all the negative, all the bad stuff, you have a story like this, and I just thought this was incredible, and he needs to be commended. The police chief of Kinston, North Carolina said, quote, a lot of people will unfortunately take that money and run with it. Kudos to that employee at Chick-fil-A. He definitely deserves a reward. The owner of this restaurant, it's a franchise, says true leadership, true integrity is doing the right thing when no one is watching. Amen. 100% right there. And then he finally, as you said, accepted $500 as a reward. And there's a photo of him. I'm looking at this article in the New York Post. And, man, that's just so heartwarming to read a story like that. So overall, between that and watching this splashdown of Artemis II, which certainly sparked my feelings of patriotism and respect for everybody involved in this, but just once again confirming that this country, by far and away, is better than any other in the planet. And you shared with me on the break that this thing got its start in the president's first term, right?
Yeah, the ball started rolling with Space Policy Directive 1, which was December 2017, that basically said that it was Trump telling NASA to, quote, lead an innovative and sustainable program of exploration with commercial and international partners to enable human expansion across the solar system and to bring back to Earth new knowledge and opportunities. Beginning with missions beyond low Earth orbit, the United States will lead the return of humans to the moon for long-term exploration and utilization, followed by human missions to Mars and other destinations.
Love it. And then, again, I maintain...
before he ever did Space Force.
Yeah, that's right. I contend that this would have happened had the president been reelected in 2020. I think we would have seen this mission come to fruition.
Yeah, because the Artemis Accords were then signed in October of 2020.
Okay. But Joe Biden, of course, clueless as he was, once again injected this DEI stuff into every corner of government, including NASA. And I believe that derailed the project and set it back quite a bit. So the heck with you Democrats for even thinking about taking credit for this. You didn't start it. It wasn't your idea. All you did was blunt all the work that had been done on it. And I believe that once this president took over and reversed all that crazy DEI garbage, that it allowed NASA to get back to their core mission and function, which is to explore space. And again, in the statement you just read as part of the order, the private sector heavily involved in this. So you see the kinds of great things that can happen when the public and the private sector collaborate. And that too, that's like kryptonite to Superman, is the private sector working with the public sector when Democrats are in charge, unless they just run everything and control it all. Unless they have a seat at the board rooms, in the boardrooms of these private companies. But this is fantastic. This is what happens. And I know this is going to shock some people. There's a profit motive here. There's an incentive. Hey, if you produce something good, you get paid for it. It's just, why is that so hard to figure out? You make a little money, you're likely to perform. Turns out human beings are coin operated. That doesn't mean it comes above other more valuable assets, such as human life, of course. Never. But it is the way to drastically improve the quality of human life on earth. And I believe God expects us to use the tools and the skills that he blessed us with, that he bestowed upon us, to create good things for others. And that's what I think is coming out of here. There will be lots of new inventions and innovations that will come of this. And, of course, the president talking about going to Mars and maybe even establishing a community on the moon. This is just great. And it, once again, clearly exemplifies American ingenuity, American might, American prowess, things we should never apologize for and we should be proud of. And I got to tell you, I got little chill bumps watching that Friday night, just knowing that I'm part of America, how blessed I am to be part of this. We take that for granted sometimes, and we should really appreciate that. I'm not trying to lecture about that, but it's events like that that make you proud, that make you see how fortunate we are and how great our country is. And it's good to feel patriotic. It's a good thing. It's not bad. The left in this country, they spend more time trying to denigrate and lambaste the United States rather than touting how fantastic our country is, how strong, how powerful, and despite what they say, how benevolent this country is, how charitable it is. Nobody takes care of its most vulnerable the way this country does. And I know they'll argue, oh no, we need more government programs. Horse hockey, that's not taking care of people. The best thing you could do to take care of people is create opportunity for them to thrive and succeed. And you can't do that when you've got the boot of government on your throat. And that's what they do. Out in California, it's Eric Swalwell. He's out. Couldn't happen to a more
of the race.
Of the race, right.
Still in Congress.
Yeah, but there's a resolution, I think, going to be filed today, if I'm not mistaken, by Representative Luna, looking to boot his butt out of Congress. It's only happened one other time, right? Santos in New York, I think, in the House. We're going to talk to Michael Guest, get his thoughts on that when he comes on. But he's out of the governor's race. Mike from Madison says, the issue with the Strait of Hormuz is that the Iranians still have a bunch of drones and small munitions hiding in those caves. And if those massive ships costing $100 million or more are threatened with attack, insurers won't insure and the ships won't take the risk. That's the Iranian leverage. Yeah, we've seen that, absolutely, that they can't get underwriting on those vessels, and thus they won't sail. Too risky. I guess the question is, Mike, I've heard that as well. Of course, the president said that Iran had a bunch of mine droppers, I think is what they're called, ships, right? That he says they've all been eliminated. I don't know if that's the case or not. I also understand we've got mine detectors, mine sweepers in the Strait trying to locate mines that are intended to blow up ships to neutralize them. But I guess the question is, okay, if there are munitions and drones in the caves, why don't we blow up the caves to get rid of those so we can open the Strait up? I'm confused about that. I mean, I'm being serious about that. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Hello. You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We appreciate you joining us as always today. So on the C Spire text line, Gerard, as a Catholic, what do you think of the interaction between the Pope Leo, and Trump this weekend? You know, I find it just disappointing more than anything else. I understand the position of both men here. I feel like the president maybe was a little harsh in his rather sharp criticism of the Pope as weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. As a Catholic, I'll tell you that, and I think my view represents the vast majority of Catholics, we don't necessarily align with all the positions of the pontiff. And also throughout history, popes are humans. There are good popes and bad popes, just depending on your viewpoint. I do think sometimes they get a little too involved in public policy, but I also understand that sometimes public policy does bleed over into what their primary function is, which is to share the gospel and promote God's way, and perhaps most importantly, to promote the idea of peace. And so when the Pope speaks out about achieving peace, he views all people as God's children, which is what the Bible teaches us. So I think what he said was maybe had a little bit too much politics in it, talking about the Pope. And I think the president's criticism was a little too harsh. I really wish that they'd work together. And keep in mind, there are a number of Catholics in the Trump administration, starting with the vice president, J.D. Vance. And so for the pontiff to be critical of war, just in a general sense, I think is appropriate. But on the other hand, I get the president's position and rationale for launching these attacks on people who just as soon see the rest of the world under their tyranny. I get that as well. So it's an unfortunate thing. Now, one thing that's really got the internet going crazy is a post by the president last night that depicted himself as Jesus. And this was a post from earlier by, I can't remember the name of the individual that did this, about a month or so ago. This particular AI-generated meme, and the president then changed that around in the meme he generated, AI-generated image last night. And in the original one, you had like this horned creature that looked like Satan, looked like the devil, and that was replaced by a person in uniform, obviously a soldier, military person. And it shows the president with his hand over a sick person, and he's wearing robes and got light coming out of his hand. Really does look like he's trying to portray himself as Jesus. And there's problems from a lot of people with this. Riley Gaines is one that came out and was very critical of this particular post. Michael Knowles, he as well. He says, I assume someone has already told him, but it behooves the president both spiritually and politically to delete the picture, no matter the intent. And it was Nick Adams, I think, perhaps. It was a February post from Nick Adams, and he framed the president in this image as healing a sick America. That was the purpose of the original image. He was criticized then because it does show the president again dressed in robes and light coming out of his hands, the way you have been accustomed to seeing Jesus. But then the difference is you had this demonic type figure over his shoulder that was replaced with a member of what looks like a soldier. So little different. But yeah, it's got the internet all riled up today. So Matt Wallace, who's a big-time MAGA influencer, he posted both of the images side by side. He has 2.3 million followers, and he asked folks to spot the difference. The one that has the demonic figure in it, kind of an image of that over his shoulder, to the one that has a soldier in place of that Satan-type figure. But, yeah, there's some folks pretty upset about this. I just think this is one of those things that we probably could have done without. I understand the intent the president is trying to project here, but this is probably over the line. I know it is for a lot of people, and they've been very critical. Coming right back after Fox News in SuperTalk News with Congressman Michael Guest. Your of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays on this Monday. Short show for you today. Ricky Matthews of Super Talk Outdoors that comes your way at 12:05. Right now, it's Mississippi Congressman Michael Guest. He represents the 3rd District. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Good morning, Gerard. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, man. So, a lot of stuff going on up there in the Capitol. What do you think about the president's actions with respect to blockading the strait there in Iran? Unfortunately, our vice president, J.D. Vance, and others that were sent on behalf of this country by the president to negotiate with the regime spent 21 hours and didn't come away with a deal.
I think that it's clear, that Iran refuses to negotiate the two most important parts of this process, which is one, that they give up their nuclear program, and two, that they open up the Strait of Hormuz for all traffic to pass through unimpeded. The other points, I think, from reports that I've read, they were able to make progress on the other points. But look, we know that it has been the position of this nation for many presidents now that Iran not be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. That is what precipitated the operation in the Middle East. And as long as Iran refuses to give up their nuclear program, I think you're going to see this president's going to use military action. He's going to use economic leverage. He's going to use everything that he can to get them to the table to where they will actually negotiate and to be able to reach an agreement that then can be enforced. What we don't want is another agreement like we saw entered into between the United States and other nations during the Obama administration, an agreement that ultimately would have allowed Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. So I think this is the next step forward. I think the president's going to continue to keep pressure on Iran. He's trying to use now economic pressure, but I think, that there is a possibility that military activity will resume in the Middle East once the ceasefire ends roughly a week from now.
He's made it very clear that the requirement is that they totally abandon their nuclear ambitions, that's the reason why we went in. He did an extensive interview over the weekend with Maria Bartiromo. I caught it. He said that's the reason we went in, quite simply, and it is the key objective of our mission. And until we get to that point, the operation continues.
Yeah, and look, the president, unlike other former commanders-in-chief, he's not going to back down off of that. He's not going to allow Iran to continue to stall for time. He's going to keep the pressure on this regime to make sure that they are no longer a threat to the area and that they are not in the process of developing a nuclear weapon. And so I support the president. I support the president in his actions to again, make sure that the objections are carried out. And I think the president will use every tool at his disposal to make that happen.
Yeah, it feels like it at this point as well. So, Congressman, you, of course, represent the great state of Mississippi in the role of a chairman of the House Ethics Committee. You got a member there in the body that might have some problems, that being Representative Eric Swalwell, who now says he is removing himself. He announced that in the race for governor of California. Lots of allegations of sexual misconduct and so forth. What do you expect to happen with respect to his seat in Congress there?
The Ethics Committee announced today that we were opening an investigation into Mr. Swalwell. Most of these allegations really just surfaced over the last 3 or 4 days. And so the announcement was made today that the Ethics Committee is going to begin an investigation. This investigation will kind of dovetail into the investigation that's currently ongoing. Similar allegations against Representative Tony Gonzalez from the state of Texas, and then also kind of goes along with what the Ethics Committee has been doing in the case of Representative McCormick from the state of Florida. Mm-hmm. And so there have been reports that individual members may file motions to expel these members. They have the right to do so. Those are what are called privilege motions, which means unless they are tabled or referred back to the committee of jurisdiction, which would be the Ethics Committee, that they would be able to receive votes. I think it's 48 hours once you make a motion privilege. That motion has to come to the floor. And so it is possible that we could be voting this week to expel members of Congress. We last did that when Representative George Santos of New York, he was expelled by the body after an ethics investigation issued a report and issued our findings as to the misspending of campaign funds, the general untruthfulness that Mr. Santos and really to some extent almost fraud that he relied on to be able to be elected to be a member of Congress. But, look, expulsion is extremely rare.
Yeah.
We, being Congress, there have only been 6 members expelled since the Civil War. So 3 of those because they fought for the Confederacy in the Civil War, 2 other members who were actually convicted of crimes by courts and then refused to resign. And then the first member of any recency that has been removed without a conviction was Mr. Santos. And so when people look at this, this is an extremely rare occurrence. Some people may say it shouldn't have taken this long. We should have already moved forward with some of these expulsions. And look, I want to make sure that we are, as a body, that we are policing ourselves any way that we can. But it does appear that there will be motions that will be filed on Tuesday to expel, I believe, both Mr. Santos and also Tony Gonzalez. And then there may be motions renewed to remove Ms. McCormick and then Representative Mills from the state of Florida.
Wow.
So it could be a very interesting week as far as internally within the House body as we look to deal with probably 2, but possibly as many as 4 expulsion motions brought to the floor this week.
Wow. Okay. Well, this is going to be interesting for sure. And it's one of those things that, honestly, I think most Americans just wish we didn't even have to mess with. But when you have a member that, I guess, brings discredit and dishonor to the body, you have to act.
Yeah, and look, historically, Gerard, what we've seen is members who are in these situations, they have chosen to resign. And once a member resigns, then there's no reason to move forward on a motion to expel. But I think in the political world that we live in, where things are so partisan, where people don't want to admit that they've done something wrong, I think you're going to probably see expulsion become something that is more common in the House of Representatives. I think there is growing support from what I'm reading online for expulsion in some of these matters. I know on the McCormick case, that is a case where the Ethics Committee met shortly before our Easter recess. We found that that there was proof that she had violated House rules in 23 of the 25 charges that were brought by the investigative subcommittee. We found that there was proof that those allegations were proven. We'll be moving into a sanctions hearing next week. Assuming that this matter is not taken up before the body this week, we will have an open hearing in which we will hear testimony from staff from the Ethics Committee as well as Ms. McCormick's counsel. And then the Ethics Committee will then make a finding as to what sanctions, if any, should be imposed in that case. And so that case is one that has worked its way through. We are there kind of at the tail end of the ethics process. But ethics processes are kind of like criminal investigations. I mean, a lot of times these things you're not able to just go out and make a finding immediately. You have to gather evidence. You have to interview witnesses. And so that's one of the reasons that matter has not come to conclusion yet. But it will either be likely coming to the floor this week, or there will be a recommendation from the full Ethics Committee when we meet on the 21st.
Gotcha. All right, great explanation. Appreciate that. We got a break right now. Can you hang with us? We got some other stuff to talk about.
Yes, sir. We'd love to.
Got it. We got Congressman Michael Guest on the line with us. Stay with us.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. We're visiting with Congressman Michael Guest. He represents, of course, Mississippi's 3rd Congressional District. So, Congressman, what's on the calendar? When you guys going back to work there in the House, and what are you going to be working on?
So I will actually be flying up early tomorrow morning, Gerard. I'll be on the 6 a.m. direct flight leaving out of Jackson. And so next week, we already talked about the possibility that we will be dealing with member conduct, possibly moving to expel members. We are also looking at DHS funding. DHS funding now continues to drag on. The president has alleviated some of the pressure points by his executive order, but we still have to deal with DHS funding. There is a divide between Republicans and Democrats as to how we're going to fund that agency. And then, even some disagreement between the House and Senate. The Senate proposed the legislation before we left for Easter recess that would have funded all but 2 agencies, that being CBP and ICE. Those agencies would then be funded or backfilled through a budget reconciliation 2.0. So we're going to be in Washington having those discussions. FISA renewal is coming up this week, so that will be another major piece of legislation that we will be trying to get across the finish line. So it's been nice to be home for 2 weeks, to spend some time with family, to be in Mississippi, to travel the district. But we've got a lot of work to do when we get back. And also with me serving on the Appropriations Committee, we are beginning the appropriations process for FY27. So I've got a busy week ahead. Once I return to Washington tomorrow morning, I've already been kind of preparing today as for some of the hearings and some of the meetings that I'll be in next week or later this week and next week.
Gotcha. Busy calendar set up. It sounds like for sure. This prospect of a Reconciliation 2.0 really intrigued me, Congressman. Did a little research on what that might include. Just kind of check this out with you. Possibility of eliminating the estate tax altogether, indexing capital gains for inflation. These would be some huge tax reforms.
Yeah, a couple of different options are out there, Gerard. One is to do a limited 2.0 reconciliation that would deal with ICE, CBT, DHS funding, and then try to do actually a reconciliation 3.0 that would encompass some of the items that you discussed. But there's also talk that, hey, we just need to put them all in one single bill. And so at this point, whether it's going to be limited, which is what the president has asked for, again, limited to DHS funding on this reconciliation, with us then trying to get a third reconciliation bill across the finish line between now and the end of the year. Those discussions are still ongoing. But look, I think it's important that as Republicans have the majority in the House, have the majority in the Senate, that we control the White House, that we use every tool at our disposal to push forward good policy, to try to circumvent the filibuster, which is why the reconciliation process is so important, because it does allow us to do that. It does allow Republicans to pass legislation without having to get the 60 votes normally needed in the Senate. And look, I think people want to know that we're working on their behalf as we're getting ready coming into the midterms, when people are saying, hey, what are you doing to help us with spending? What are you trying to do to help us with tax relief? I think it's important that we talk about things that we're doing now, not things that we did last year.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody's forward-looking, and it is, you well know, it's a what have you done for me lately world. It doesn't matter if it's business or politics. That's just the way the cycles work in our society these days. But I think this is good news, perhaps taking another bite at the reconciliation apple and trying to get some additional tax reforms through. And speaking of which, what are you hearing from your constituents with respect to the positive surprise, I guess, to those that maybe weren't tracking it that closely, of having increased refunds this tax season?
Yeah, I think people are just now really starting to see the impact of that the prior reconciliation, the one big beautiful bill, as the president called it, how it was going to impact them personally, how it was going to impact them financially. And look, that was a major win for the president and a major win for conservatives. We locked in lower tax rates for every American making $12,000 or less, or excuse me, $12,000 or more. We kept the standard deduction and the child tax credit from being slashed in half. We created additional deductions for seniors, those individuals who work hourly and are paid by overtime, those people who earn their income by way of tips. And so some of those people are now are very surprised when they get their tax statement back and they see that they are in line for a much greater refund than they ever imagined. And so it's good to see that we're able to do something that helps Americans keep more of their hard-earned money. But you're right. We don't need to just rest there. We need to continue to move forward in a reconciliation 2.0 or 3.0 to extend that into other areas. But look, the president's tax cut is going to help a huge number of Americans, a huge number of Mississippians, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to vote for it in Congress.
Yeah, absolutely. The presidential war powers, Congressman, there were a couple of resolutions, were there not, in the Congress to perhaps limit the president's power here with these attacks on Iran. What do you think about that? Where'd you stand on that?
At this point, I am not in favor of limiting the president's power. Look, we don't have troops on the ground. At this point, we are in the middle of a ceasefire. There are no hostilities going on between the U.S. and Iran. I think this is Democrats wanting to micromanage the president on this matter. I think that at this point that a war powers resolution is not needed. And if a war powers resolution comes back to the floor this week, I would not be supportive of it. Now, if the Democrats, as the situation continues to go on, if there end up being plans, long-term plans to put boots on the ground, things of that nature, I think at that point you may have a rightness issue, and that may be the time for that to be considered by the House and Senate. But look, there's no hostilities. There's a ceasefire that is ongoing. We do not have boots on the ground. And so I think for us at this point to be talking about war powers, trying to limit the president's authority, I think that would be harmful to Americans if we are going to continue to negotiate with Iran, if we're going to get them to concede not to develop a nuclear weapon and open the strait. We do not need to be having war powers resolutions tying the president's hand and binding his authority.
Okay. All right. So we got midterms coming up. What's your outlook? What does your crystal ball say?
Look, I think still too early to tell. I think the main issue that people are going to be focused on are going to be the economy, cost of living. And look, prior to the operation in the Middle East, we had some great economic numbers that we could tout to the American public about the fact that we were really seeing a resurgence in the economy. We saw inflation, which was as high as 9% under Biden-Harris. It had dropped to roughly 2.5% under President Trump. We saw the Dow Jones at 50,000. We saw gas prices at a 5-year low. We saw $10 trillion in new investment that had been announced. The third quarter GDP was up to 4.5%. So we started to see mortgage rates come down as well as interest rates. And so the economy was really moving in the right direction. Since the war in Iran, we know that we have seen gas prices spike. We have seen a rise in inflation. But if you look at core inflation, if you take out the cost associated with fuel, core inflation is still low. We had some good unemployment numbers that came in last month. I think we added 178,000 new jobs. We know that fourth quarter GDP was only up 0.5%, but I think a lot of that, Gerard, was tied to the fact that we had a government shutdown.
Yeah.
And some of the CBO studies said that they believe that the impact of that government shutdown could have lowered that GDP by as much as 2%. And so we know that there was somewhere between probably a 10 to $20 billion impact on the economy because of the government shutdown. So again, we had good numbers going into the conflict. I hope once the conflict ends, and I hope it ends quickly, that we will see a resurgence of that good economic news. But I think the economy is going to be the driver going forward in the November election.
Yeah, I totally agree and appreciate your analysis. And I always appreciate you coming on Middays, Congressman Michael Guest. Thanks a lot. We'll be talking to you soon, probably next time from Washington.
Thank you, Gerard. Have a great day.
You too. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. The C-Spire text line, it's 601-879-4395. How about Democrat Senator Mark Kelly? I was just talking about the feeling of just patriotism and deep respect for this country, its armed forces, the private sector that contributed so much to make this Artemis II mission possible. And guess what? Democrat Senator Mark Kelly, thought to be, Rhino, a prospective candidate for president, regarding the Artemis II crew. Now, he, of course, has a little experience at this, right? An astronaut. He says the last thing I would want in a space shuttle crew would be 7 white guy U.S. Navy test pilots like me. Why in the hell in this country are we so tied up in knots over this race and the way people look, the color of their skin? I thought we were supposed to move beyond that. What am I missing here? Can't you guys make up your mind, you stupid liberals? We get castigated because we see people through different lenses and we jump to conclusions because of their physical appearance. Then we're told, no, we can't have everybody that looks like that. Is that not a conflict?
Well, there's also the conflict of Mark Kelly having commanded the final flight of Space Shuttle Endeavour, on which there was a crew of 6 astronauts, all white males, and 4 of the 6 were ex-military pilots.
And I'm looking at a picture of that. You're exactly right. I just don't get it. What? Can we just eliminate that totally out of the equation? What one looks like, what race they are, what ethnicity, what national origin, what sex, what sexual orientation. Can't we just look at, I don't know, qualifications, skills, capabilities, value proposition? That's what made this country great. But we have idiots that are doing everything in their power to tear it down. That's what I feel like's happening in this country. And idiots like Mark Kelly, in my view, he doesn't deserve to sit in the United States Senate. That's disgusting. Totally. Speaking of crazy liberal socialists, Zoran Mondami, he says, sorry, there are not going to be any free buses this year. After he campaigned on it for months. You got played, New York. They are about to launch the first grocery store, though, right? I think they're getting close to that. It's like $30 million spent on it. How's that going to work out? How's it worked out elsewhere where it's been tried? Dismal failure. Pretty much accept that that's what's going to happen here.
But they're going to save money by buying in bulk.
Nobody's ever thought about that before. Oh, my gosh. Meanwhile, crazy loon liberal Tim Walz, Tampon Tim, as he was referred to, like so many of these libs, he's soft on crime, including in the courts in Minnesota. So there's a suspect, I can't pronounce his name because he's a Somalian. Abdurrashid Abdurrashid. How about that? Saeed, a suspect in this $11 million Medicaid fraud scheme, not the total scheme, just his part, $11 million. He's left the country just before his hearing and posted a $150,000 bond and was allowed to keep his passport. I've said it so many times. They facilitate it and then look the other way. There's no doubt about it.
He was given a choice of bonds.
What's that?
He was offered a $50,000 conditional bond that would have required him to surrender his passport, or a $150,000 unconditional bond.
Oh, my gosh.
So he chose the unconditional bond so he could have his passport so he could skedaddle.
For an $11 million scam. That's what we get. That's pathetic. So now we have an individual, Zul Mohammed. And for those that think that I'm just diving into all this race stuff because I'm a racist, okay, fine, so be it. I don't care. There's zero evidence of that in my background. I'm just pointing out the lunacy that's happening in the country. This nut here, he's pleaded guilty to 106 felony counts voter fraud counts of all things. He's pleaded guilty. He's running for mayor in Carrollton, Texas. Now think about that. This guy who pleaded guilty to voter fraud is running to be in a position of making laws. It's unbelievable how upside down and sick some of this crap is. Just incredible. And I don't know if you're paying attention to what's happening in Scotland. We've talked many times about how the UK, the EU in general, just overrun with immigrants from numerous Muslim countries. Glasgow, Scotland. You just wouldn't think you'd see this in Scotland. I'm looking at a video right now. They're vouching, they're lobbying to implement Sharia law to enforce respect for Muhammad and the Quran. And I'm watching this speech. It's in like a square in the city there, and it's covered up with Muslims. And one of these leaders is speaking, and the name of this particular Twitter account is Islam Invasion. And this speaker says, any disrespect of our prophet will not be tolerated. This is happening in Scotland. This is upside down. Just incredible. You've seen the story of the nuns. You talk about jumping the shark here. The nuns in New York that take care of the impoverished, terminally ill have been doing it for like 100 years. And the stupid-ass government in New York says, oh, you got to refer to these people by their preferred pronouns. They're worried about pronouns. They're terminally ill cancer patients in many cases. I've seen photos of them. You can tell. They're on death's door. God bless them. And God bless these nuns for trying to give them a little bit of comfort and dignity before they perish. And they're worried about pronouns? Am I getting it? Is this right? You saw this, right?
Oh, yeah.
This is sick. And the nuns say, we can't do it. It goes against our religion. And by the way, we're trying to take care of sick people here. So we prioritize pronouns over just giving a little bit of comfort to a person's in their last days. That's what they think about. You stupid liberals that want this crap, you should be thanking these nuns. Thanking them. They've sacrificed their entire lives to take care of these sick people. But you're forcing them to use your stupid-ass pronouns? I know, I get mad. I'm sorry. But that's disgusting. Is there anything more disgusting than that? And you know what they're saying, of course? Well, it's their rights. And I've said it many times before, and I'll say it again today. Your rights stop when they impose upon the rights of others. And you're imposing upon the rights of these nuns. Is that wrong? That's exactly
what it's a free country. You can make believe and live in your own little personal la-la land all you want to. You cannot force others to live in that la-la land with you.
But that's exactly what they're doing here. It's precisely what they're doing. They're using nuns as their little pawn for their sick, radical agenda. That's despicable. How can that happen in this country, man? And they just look the other way. Meanwhile, here at home, with respect to the legislative session, it's still up in the air as to whether or not they're going to be called back down to the Capitol. I've kind of said, well, if you're a member of PERS, you're a teacher, an independent pharmacist, you were looking for a decrease in spending, you want to bet on sporting events, you'd like to see the ballot initiative restored, and if you drink alcohol in the state of Mississippi, it probably wasn't a great session for you. The latter is of particular interest because even the Washington Post picked up on it and published an article yesterday. This is the title of the article. Mississippi is running out of liquor, and it's the state's fault. Even the Washington Post is talking about it. Coming right back with the final segment.
Polyupa, Mississippi.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a ever-loving light on me.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. So, looks like business is picking up in the Gulf of America. Yeah, Jerry in Waynesboro sent this graphic, and it shows ships that are headed to our ports to pick up some oil. Now, keep in mind, we still import oil. We produce about 13 million barrels a day. We consume 20 million. We do export some, and this all has to do with something we've talked about before, just the misalignment of chemistry. Our refineries built around refining what's called the dirty, high-sulfur content oil as opposed to the light, sweet crude. And a lot of what we produce now in fracking is light sweet, but our refineries can't handle that. So we ship it overseas to refine, and then they ship dirty oil, which is what Venezuela is flush with, into this country. But we do export about 3 million. We import about 7 million, so we're still a net importer of 3.5 to 4 million barrels a day. But we do not realize we once did. That's what caused the big oil crisis in the 70s of Middle Eastern oil. The vast majority, over half of the oil we import, comes from Canada, it turns out. So, let's see. When I recruited for the Army, we were told it's great you did good last month, but that has nothing to do with this month. 100%. And it's the same way in business, I can assure you. We used to have a saying around my company, pretend like today is the last day of the month. You're trying to hit your number. Pretend that every day is the last day. Yeah, it's what have you done for me lately? There's no doubt about it. But that's fine. That's the way people function. No big deal. People would be hating Trump for whole different reasons if Iran ever dropped a nuke on our country, says Darren in Jackson. Agree. Let's see. The left would love to have Sharia law in our country, says Tim and McGee. Man, it sure feels like it. Deborah in Corinth says, the more excited Gerard gets, the more he sounds like Jerry Seinfeld. I love it. Well, I hadn't really thought about that. Does my voice resemble his when I get fired up? Maybe a little bit. He gets kind of the same cadence, I'd say, when he gets fired up. Dan in Hattiesburg says they're worried about someone whose pronoun is about to be dead. I agree, Dan. That's why I found this so just insane and ridiculous. And I was proud of the sisters. They actually posted an official response. Trying to see who was responsible for it. I don't think that they credited any particular. Oh, yeah, Mother Marie Edward, General Superior of the Hawthorne Dominicans. That's the order that operates at this facility in New York. She says, we sisters have taken care of patients from all walks of life, ideologies, and faiths. By the way, since 1901. But this is some goofy state law that says, oh, yeah, you got to refer to them by their preferred pronoun. Back off, you goofy liberal ideologues. That's useless, and it's dumb.
Everything liberals do, for the most part, is useless and dumb.
Jeez, it's just ridiculous. Randy in Starkville says, thought you were getting your blood pressure too high. Just remember, sometimes it helps. It says, he sent me a big graphic, says, note to self, do not argue with people that should have been swallowed. Oh, my gosh. Ben from Madison says, cut our losses and get the state the hell out of the liquor business. The thing is a mess. I know it won't happen, but it should. I agree with you, Ben. Just keep in mind the big issue here is how to deal with the revenue generated, not from the taxes so much on the alcohol distributed by the Alcoholic Beverage Control Distribution Facility, but by the profit made on the distribution. So that's the concern that lawmakers have, is if we completely got the state out of it and we just turned it over to the private sector, they're too going to have to make a profit. But in this case, rather than the state keeping the profit money, the private company would, and the state would be out that amount of money. It's about $60 million a year, and with a really tight budget, they're just thinking twice about that. Plus, we got the matter of this massive investment they're making in a brand new warehouse. What do you do with that thing? Maybe we should consider negotiating, Rhino, with a private entity to take over the function. And the condition of it is you got to occupy the warehouse. You got to buy the warehouse. Surely we could work something out. We business people could do that kind of stuff. I think there's an opportunity there. I agree with you, Ben. Totally. We should do something. Mo says, Gerard, Rhino, I wish liberals would talk to Muslims like they talk to Christians. Yeah. Don't hold your breath on that one, Mose. I hear you, though, man. D.C. and Jackson got a bunch of wee crybabies, says Joey the trucker. Wow. Dan, I agree with you. That's the first thing that hit me. I just got to say that again. Wait, we're worried about pronouns for people who are terminally ill? Whew, boy, I'm going to calm down. We're out of here today, back at a remote tomorrow. Stay safe, and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.